Well, hi, welcome to the Raptor's Lair for our first face-to-face with Rockasaurus interview. These have been difficult times for the music industry. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating effect on the music industry, as we're all aware. Venues closed down, in limbo, loads of people just basically out of work. However, there is one band in particular who have managed to buck the trend to a large extent with an absolutely incredible output of work. I'm referring to the Jack J Hutchinson band, and with me today is the man himself, Jack J Hutchinson. Welcome, Jack. Thanks for coming and having a chat.
It's good to see you, man. I'm sorry that you've not got the handsome pair with us here today, Laz and Felipe. You're stuck with me.
We'll cope without them. Yeah.
Can we CGI them into this clip?
Yeah, that's a thought. We could do that. Yeah. Now then, you've been pretty busy, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a kind of bizarre way, this year has been the busiest year I've probably had since all this started about 5 years ago. And obviously the 12 months of touring that we'd got scheduled, where we were going to go to, France, Brazil, Russia, Germany, Switzerland, hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But we've done different things, and it's been a really fun year as well, despite the fact that we've been contending with coronavirus and everything that has happened with that. We've had a lot of laughs and we've done some good stuff, and it's been a creative period as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the actual physical output of music has been quite phenomenal. Obviously, yeah, Who Feeds the Wolf came out just before everything went belly up.
Yeah.
But the fact you've been able to actually produce several albums since then, it's quite a remarkable feat.
Yeah, we'd sort of got this plan with Who Feeds the Wolf, which came out last October. We released the record and it got great reviews. Lots of people seemed to dig it, and we'd got the tour scheduled to kick off in February. So we actually started the tour. We got about 10 dates in, did the UK element of it, but then obviously the tail end of the UK tour got cancelled. But yeah, it was a sort of devastating period right at the beginning, because I find it hard to come off tour anyway. Mentally, I don't deal with coming off tour very well. But to come off tour because of coronavirus and then suddenly be hauled up in my flat at home, it was really difficult. And I guess the way I dealt with it was to just throw myself into creating music and set up a home studio, which I've never had before. So that was quite fun, getting that together. And yeah, and just started writing material with Laz and Felipe and trying to be positive.
Set the world on fire.
So we've got When the Hammer Falls, 13th of November, am I right in thinking?
So we've got this single coming out on the 13th of November, which is called World on Fire, which was a track that we recorded actually just before the pandemic, and we recorded at this beautiful studio in Brazil when we were on tour in Brazil. And the plan was to release that as a standalone single, really, in the summer. So it's got a kind of massive chorus, it's got this kind of killer riff, and we were like, that's perfect for the festival season. So the plan was to release it in, I guess, sort of May, June time. But those plans, like a lot of plans, got put on hold. And since then, we've written a lot of new material, and this will be on the next album. It's the first track from the next album. And it sounds really cool. So yeah, 13th of November, we're releasing it. And I'm super proud of this track, mainly because we wrote it when we were on tour, and I had this riff that I've been noodling around with in sound checks and stuff when we were in Brazil, and it kind of came together with the guys. And for anybody that's followed my career so far, I've basically written everything. So all my albums have been solo Jack J Hutchinson compositions. So to write with Laz and Felipe was a bit of an eye-opener. Those guys listen to a lot of the same music as me, but Laz is, Laz is a big metal fan, and he listens to a lot of complicated stuff, and You know, one of his favourite bands is Trivium. You know, he said, "Oh, we could bring some of that into the next album." And I said to him, "Well, you're going to pay for guitar lessons then?" Because it's like blimey, no. But World on Fire has this really interesting middle section that essentially Laz and Felipe helped come up with in the studio.
Yeah.
So,
and it is a really cool central section as well to the song. I mean, yeah, I have it already, of course, complete with the hand-drawn artwork. Well, actually, wrong way up. But yeah, I mean, that central section, that's quite something, because you actually think the song's finished and fading out, but then you think, hang on, no, this is still going. Oh, I like that. You know, it's a really cool centerpiece there.
I think it's bringing in that Pink Floyd influence that Laz and Felipe, massive Floyd fans. I'll be honest, I never really was a Floyd fan, and then I've sort of been indoctrinated into Pink Floyd through listening to it in the
they've
van.
done some good then.
Yeah. So I think it is quite Floydy, and there's a lot of material that we've written for the next record that's like that, where it's taking listeners on a journey that is perhaps, for people that have been familiar with my work, that have come to me from the sort of blues rock side of things, and particularly the blues side of things, it might be a little bit shocking. You know, there's a section on a track, the title track of the album that we've been working on, Hammer Falls, which is like Laz said, we should try and do a track that's a bit like Master of Puppets, where you've got all these different elements to it that has a sort of dual guitar solo in and all this stuff. And it's been really exciting to get in the studio, having written this stuff in the lockdown period, you know, sending each other files through Dropbox and things. It's not the way I've worked previously.
No.
But when you can't actually be in the same physical space as your bandmates, it actually kind of forces us to be really creative, and we've come up with a lot of cool ideas. So we went into the studio last month to start work on the album. We're recording at Momentum Studios down in Devon, where Chris Barris recorded his last album. Yeah. And we're sort of at the beginning stages of it. We're going back into the studio in a couple of weeks to sort of finish the second half of the tracking. But it's getting there, and we're hoping people dig it when it eventually comes out.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I mean, I've been following your sort of your work since I saw you at the Black Heart quite a few years ago now with Boom Boom Brotherhood.
Yeah.
You know, and I've actually seen the way your music has developed from those days where I mean, I hate to think how many songs you actually played in that relatively short set, because they're all really short songs.
Yeah.
Just bang, 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 with a nice little bit of banter in between. But I've seen how the music's developed from that to rather more intricate work with a lot more detail, attention to detail, if you like, but greater musical development. Instead of it just being a little ditty, it's been a proper song.
Yeah, I think
no insult intended.
I think that those. I listened to a track actually from the Boom Boom Brotherhood album this week, and I've not listened to that album in a long time. And it sounds cool to me, but it does sound like somebody who's at the beginning stages of learning how to write music. And I think that certainly the material on Paint No Fiction and Who Feeds the Wolf was a progression on that. And one thing I learned to do was actually to be more open in my lyrics and write about things that actually matter to me, as opposed to almost writing in the third person and trying to come up with a really cool riff and then some cool lyrics. Actually writing songs that are about my personal experiences. And you know, I had a really interesting chat with somebody this week who sadly their father had passed away, and we were talking about dementia, and I wrote this song called I Will Follow You, which is on Who Feeds the Wolf, and she had her son play that at the funeral, and I saw a video clip of him rehearsing the song with his band, and it's so moving to think I've written a piece of music that touches people in that way. And that song for me is there's a few songs I've written that really I don't know how to say it without sounding like super arrogant or whatever, but I remember writing that song and listening to it thinking, well, that's pretty good, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm really pleased that people listen to that stuff and really dig it.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's great when you've actually done something that has influenced people and, you know, touched a nerve, if you like, you know, and that they can really relate to. And, well, you shouldn't worry about sounding arrogant about that, because that, to me, would be considered a great achievement, you know. So it's it's a really good thing to do.
We when we started rehearsing for the Who Feeds the Wolf tour, which would have been, we had the album launch last October, but we did some rehearsals in January, and I said to the guys, I don't think we should do this song. I was a bit like, I don't think it sounds great on the record. I actually wrote that song, and I got some studio time the following day, so I recorded it really quickly after I'd written it.
Yeah.
And I think that's captured in the recording, is that raw emotion of having written it.
Yeah.
And so I do find it difficult to sing live. We did it in France a few weeks ago, and you know, I've not seen my dad in what, like 9-10 months now. I mean, I've done Zoom calls with him and stuff, because they set these Zoom calls up in the home, and I basically just play guitar for him.
Yeah.
I just play some AC/DC or Guns N' Roses or whatever. But it was emotional singing that song in front of a live audience, because I haven't been doing it.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
The river runs to walls, the ripples burst the seas. Please don't lose your words and break what's meant to be. If you follow me, well, I will follow you. Well, I will follow you.
During lockdown, yes, you've of course produced this bootleg series.
Yeah.
Of albums. Now, obviously, you had the live stream gig in Reading. That was very well received, wasn't it? And of course, you've done the live feed from that onto CD, which you've put out there. Then, of course, your first live gig in front of an audience, which I was very fortunate to be at Leo's Red Lion. Now, that must have been quite a night for you.
Yeah, it was a sort of surreal night as well, because, just playing in front of an audience, you get an adrenaline rush when you start a set anyway. Whether you've been on tour for 6 months, no matter what you do, every gig is slightly different. So I've always had this buzz of going on stage. I don't get nervous. It's just kind of like the first track, you're almost like, you can feel it. It's like you're going to explode.
Yeah.
And then you settle into the set. But that was like tenfold at that gig. And just seeing people. And it's funny, because I think people didn't really know how to react in the audience for the first couple of tracks. There was like this attitude. I got this vibe of like, are we allowed to like chant or and applaud? We got to be really quiet. Everyone had been told so many different rules and regulations for how to proceed with a gig that I think everyone just was confused as to how to respond.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing evening, and Terry, who owns that venue, big thanks to him, because he also allowed us to shoot a music video early on in the day in the venue. So the video for World on Fire was shot that day. So actually, when I got in it was probably about 2 a.m. I got home, I was absolutely shattered, because we'd done about 12 hours of playing on that day, which is, it was an incredible occasion. And, you know, all of the people that are involved with the Rock Cooperative that organise those gigs, which I think they've done maybe 7 or 8 of them now.
I think they're up to 9 now.
9, and they've had some killer bands on there, like you know, Bad Touch have done a gig there, Scam, who I really rate, they did a show there, and I think that they've worked really hard to make sure that they're as safe as possible, that the bands are looked at. We felt really kind of safe doing it, because there's another thing as well, is you as a band, you're like, how's this going to go in terms of getting up in front of people? But
Yeah.
it was wicked. And we recorded it and put it out as this bootleg album. And essentially what those have done is they've helped keep the band going through this period. We've had a lot of really great support from people. And it's kind of weird because actually I feel like we've built a bigger fan base through this period. As opposed to sitting still, well, you can sort of track it in terms of how many copies of your albums you're selling and how much streaming you're getting. But that's helped fund, it's helped pay the rent, but it's also helped fund the next stage of recording at Momentum Studios. And and we are forever grateful to everyone for purchasing this stuff. And, you know, it's cool. It's a cool memento for people that went to the gig. For a lot of people, that's the first gig they've been to in 6 months. So they got a recording.
Well, that's right. Well, it's very rare, of course, to actually have a recording of a gig that you've been to.
I tell you what, one thing that people don't necessarily realise that is quite tricky about this stuff is that we couldn't rehearse for these gigs. So when we did the first gig, the live stream for the album launch at the Face Bar in Reading, we didn't rehearse for that gig. So we'd not played the songs because of lockdown. So it was like, get up. I remember we were sat around before we went on and I was like, I better remember how to play these bloody songs. Cause you can rehearse them on your own, but when you're on tour as a band, I always feel like after about 2 or 3 gigs, you're actually not operating as individuals. You become one musician. The band just becomes intuitively one entity. Sounds a bit hippie-esque, doesn't it? But that's how I feel.
No, I can understand that, yeah.
So when we did the gig at the Face Bar, it didn't necessarily feel super tight, but it felt like we were doing something that was quite important. And then when we did Leo's, we were kind of more in the flow of things because we'd fortunately done the music video. So we played the track World on Fire right at the end, and it was great because we've been playing it all day.
Yeah. So you knew the words by then?
Just about, yeah. Yeah. The thing is that with the lyrics to that song, it had different lyrics. It's the same with there's a track called Lucky Man, which had completely different lyrics, and I recorded 2 vocals for that, and then picked the one where I preferred the lyrics. And sometimes when I'm performing that song live, I end up singing the alternate lyrics. Excellent. It's like Guns N' Roses with "Don't Cry," you know.
Oh yeah.
Nobody likes the alternate lyrics, do they?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And you've even played a gig in France recently as well.
Screaming for the rapture, and I was sleep on the owner, and my heart beat like a thunder, because you face me down, 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 down.
So that must have been quite an experience, actually leaving the country to do a gig.
Yeah, I mean, we had to agree to obviously quarantine when we came back. But we were just really excited to go over to France. We were supposed to be going over to do a festival over there, which obviously got cancelled. And I think the attitude that we've had through this whole period has been, let's try what we can, see if we can achieve it. And, you know, I'm sure there's people that looked on that and were like, why the hell are they going to France to do a show? But we went over there, we had lots of conversations with the organisers about making it COVID secure and that sort of thing. It was in a theatre venue, which I think was quite important in that it was a big enough venue so you could have seats that were essentially cordoned off, so you'd have like groups of 2 and then a break, and then it meant that there was a lower capacity, but everybody was wearing masks, hand sanitizers all around the venue. It's a weird environment to walk onto a stage and see that sea of people in masks, because you can't help but be reminded of the situation. And you know, when I go to rock and roll shows, I want to let loose, and you actually want to forget everyday life. You want to lose yourself in that evening. You want to be having a beer with your mates. I go to a lot of gigs myself normally, and I miss that social aspect of things. So everybody's trying to enjoy themselves, but within the confines of this bizarre situation. But I felt like we went out there and absolutely smashed it. I walked off stage that night and I was like, that's more like it. It felt like we'd done the 2 gigs, the stream and then the gig at Leo's, and it felt like that France gig. I said to the guys, like, we don't know when we're going to be able to come back and play in France, so we got to give it everything. And yeah, it was a great situation to be in, that we recorded it, and then we put that out as the third bootleg album, and we sold a load of them to the people that came to that gig. So hopefully they enjoyed it, and we hope to be back in France next year. We'll just have to see how things go.
Well, yeah, no, everything's up in the air at the moment, isn't it? So,
Yeah.
who knows? Who knows? Let me take you back to your early years, and when you basically first picked up a guitar and thought, well, this is what I want to do. When did that moment arise for you when you realised that this is what you want to do?
Do you know what? I mean, I had guitar lessons when I was about 11. My dad bought me like a Stratocaster copy. It's called a Falcon. And I've still got that guitar. But I got it for Christmas, and they got me guitar lessons. And I didn't really enjoy guitar lessons. I actually really wanted to be in the fields playing footy with my mates. So I dreaded guitar lessons. And it was probably because of the guitar teacher that I had. He was trying to teach me classical guitar and that sort of thing, and I just wasn't into it. But I remember one of the homework things that he gave me was to learn Satisfaction by the Stones, and that kind of triggered something in me. But it was discovering Led Zeppelin that kind of set me on the right track. And I remember actually having my final guitar lesson. I had persuaded my mum to cancel the lessons, and she said to this chap, do you think he's learnt enough to be able to succeed on guitar? And he said, well, I don't feel like Jack has applied himself at all well, so no. And actually those words stuck with me, because I was like, I'll bloody show you, So then I got into Zepp through one of my friends, Johnny Buck's dad, Andy. He lent me the Led Zepp box set, the one that came out in the 90s, which was it had a cornfield on the front with the silhouette of the Zeppelin going over the top. Yeah. And 4-disc set. And I remember I did this project in art, which was, it was like, draw something that means a lot to you. And I made this ginormous pencil drawing of the Zoso sundial from this box set. Yeah. And I've got that at home actually still. And I was just obsessed with Jimmy Page. I heard Heartbreaker. That's the first Zepp tune I remember really sticking with me and learning it. And I then painted. I just got obsessed with it actually. My dad got me an amp, and I painted it with the Zoso on the front, and he went ballistic at me. But I was obsessed with getting a Les Paul, and I got an Epiphone Les Paul for my birthday when I was about 14. And that was the starting point for me discovering a whole raft of music was Zeppelin, because you start to trace back their influences and the bands that they influenced, and suddenly you've got this whole pool of absolutely amazing music that inspires you, and you then start to kind of, I guess, write your own material based on that. So yeah. And then it develops.
So, I mean, you would say that Led Zepp is your biggest influence?
I would say so, yeah. I think, particularly in terms of guitar, Jimmy Page, it's not just the sort of obvious stuff like I've mentioned, Heartbreaker and, Whole Lot of Love, Rock and Roll, Black Dog, all those riff-based songs. It was cool to get into Zeppelin and actually learn a lot of the stuff where they'd done like reggae and learn those sorts of rhythms. And he taught me a lot about rock and roll and blues, and then tracing back to people like Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Elmore James. Those musicians started to influence my guitar playing. And then I got into Peter Green, and Peter Green was a massive influence on me. Yeah. Particularly in terms of the blues material I was doing for quite a few years. And I think there's something about Zeppelin which is it's probably not going to be repeatable because of the way that the world is now in regards to social media, is that bands give you everything. You go on Instagram and a band is showing you washing their underpants or something. Whereas with Led Zeppelin, there was mystery. Yeah. And I think we miss that a little bit now.
Yeah. Although it's fair to say, though, because of the way the industry has changed and the the way that money is less plentiful within the industry, bands are having to connect with their fans far more intensively than they once did. So that I don't think there's actually that room for the mystique that used to surround bands, simply because they've got to be out there and be pushing just to make even the slightest living from the music. I mean, let's face it, you know, most musicians have actually got day jobs to supplement their income, you know.
Yeah.
And it's not like there's a big bucket of money being poured all over the industry like there used to be. You know, nobody's making a fortune out of it these days, apart from the bands who are already massively established.
Yeah, I think that the way we've had to operate for, well, I've been doing this about 5 years now, is you're constantly putting stuff out, and actually you release an album and within 2 or 3 months nobody cares anymore, because they're looking for new content all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that's problematic in many ways. It's all about content, and you have then silly comments from like the Spotify boss saying, you know, bands aren't releasing enough material,
Not working hard enough.
It depends on what the quality you want to put out as well. Like when we release albums, like Who Feeds the Wolf took 18 months to record. You know, that's a lot of studio time, a lot of expense goes into that. We got it done on vinyl, which is again, you know, the process of getting a vinyl pressed is not, you don't record something on a Sunday and stick it out on the internet, like a lot of bands do now.
Yeah.
I feel like an album is a representation of your situation and your life at a particular time. And so you need to let it breathe and organically grow. I think a lot of bands are just like, I'm going to stick an album out after, you know, we've written a bunch of tracks, let's go in and record it, and the whole process takes 2 months. For me, that's not how you make albums that have weight.
No.
I write a lot of songs, but a lot of them don't make the album because I want them to be the 10 best tracks that I've written.
You want quality over quantity. Yeah.
I believe so, yeah. I think for me that is a really important thing, and you want an album to be an album rather than it just being 3 singles and then 7 filler tracks.
Absolutely.
I listen to a lot of new albums where, you know, there's some killer bands out there at the moment, so don't get me wrong, I do really rate a lot of bands, but then some albums I buy and I'm like, okay, I'm on to track 4 and it's already lost its energy.
Yeah. No, I
So
understand.
that's what we try to achieve with stuff.
But who feeds the wolf on the other side?
A lot of new bands around, Jack. Now, can you pick out a few that you particularly admire that are producing some really cool music at the moment?
Yeah, there's this great up-and-coming band called Traffic. No, I'm only joking. There's some great bands, like a lot of bands that we've done shows with, actually, that, you know, a lot of the bands that were on the Earache New Wave of Rock and Roll album we were on early on this year. Loz Campbell, I think, is great.
Oh, she's marvellous, isn't she? Yeah.
Verity White, I really rate. She's worked so hard in lockdown doing a Monday evening streams. Scam are a great bunch of guys. I think they've obviously got very similar sort of influences to myself and Steve. Actually, in lockdown, after about 6 weeks, although I'm a generally positive geezer, about 6 weeks in, I went into like meltdown on social media, which was kind of the point where I thought I maybe need to just stop going on social media. I just got a bit of cabin fever. It wasn't quite Jack Nicholson in The Shining, but it was getting there.
It was close.
And Steve sent me this really nice message on Facebook, just saying like, if you ever want to chat, just give us a call. And he didn't really know me, man. It was a really awesome thing that he did that. So it's something I won't forget that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it helps that they make badass music as well.
Absolutely,
So I wouldn't just say listen to Scam because they're nice guys.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of bands that are coming through now that have influences from classic rock, but it doesn't sound like a sort of pastiche of that genre. It sounds like they're taking it in a new direction, contemporizing stuff.
Yeah.
You know, when you listen to a band like Alter Bridge, that have clearly got a sort of 70s rock vibe in there, but it sounds brand new.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of bands that are doing that as well, and that's what I'm interested in, is trying to take something in a different direction.
Yeah.
I think when you listen to like one of my tracks, like Justified, has a sort of Zet riff, but it for me it sounds like a different type of thing. It sounds new.
Yeah.
I hope it sounds new to other people. So yeah, when I listen to somebody like Loz Campbell and like Hannah Wickland as well, I think he's great. Els Bailey, I think, has done some fantastic work.
Absolutely.
And she deserves every success she's getting at the moment. I think there's some really interesting stuff, like Don Martin is a great blues player. He's again taking blues but contemporizing it, whatever that means, really.
It's just bringing it up to date, isn't it? You know, and it is putting the modern twist on things.
I think ultimately we're telling stories that everybody's been telling in music for centuries.
Yeah.
So it's like nobody owns a particular genre, and you can be influenced by rock, you can be influenced by blues, whatever. But you've got to make it your own, and you've got to talk about your own experiences. So those particular bands are great, and there's an absolute wave of new material coming out that we've sort of been proud to feel like we're part of it. I think the New Wave of Classic Rock Facebook group and the guys that run that, you know, Richard Brinley, Peter Rattray, you've got John Theobald, they're all really cool people that have sort of championed these bands. A lot of bands that are, you know, pretty young musicians that are influenced by this killer genre, that it's like everything, you've got to keep it alive, which I hope people feel like we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, rock and roll certainly is not dead by any means. And the great thing is we are seeing a lot of these new bands bringing in a younger audience.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, it's all well and good old gits like me going along to the gigs, but you want to see some young faces there as well, because, you know, eventually we're all going to be dead. You know, you need that younger generation coming up.
No, you won't, Nick.
No, well, old rockers never die. They just start smelling a bit iffy. But,
this is actually my tour jacket.
is that what it was? Yeah.
I think that, when we went to Brazil last year, and we get this a lot in like Spain, is we played a few shows at the start of the Brazil tour where you've got a lot of really young female rock fans, you know, wearing AC/DC t-shirts and that kind of thing, and they want to hear some live rock and roll. And I think maybe you don't get that as much in this country at the moment, but we certainly get that abroad, where there's a real hunger for it. And I think, you know, what can be the power of a live rock and roll band, I still get that when I go and see bands, where that sort of adrenaline rush you get when you're hit in the face by the sound of that drum kit and the bass and the rock, sorry, not the rock guitar, you know, the guitar. But I think there's definitely a hunger for it, and it felt like prior to lockdown, it felt like those audiences were getting big again, and I'm hoping that when we come out of the other side of this, like I said earlier on, it feels like we've got a bigger fan base than we did at the start of the year, bizarrely, through all of this stuff we've been sticking out. And so I'm hoping that when we come out of this and all these bands get back on the road, that it's going to be a bigger scene than it was before.
Well, I think there's a big element of people that realising that you don't realise what you've got until it's gone.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be like floodgates opening once we can start living a more normal life.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously gigs are getting put back left, right and centre. I mean, Andy and I were supposed to be seeing Ozzy the other day.
Is it the O2?
At the O2.
Yeah, I was supposed to be at that.
Yeah, so it's now 2022 that's been moved to. So, I mean,
Well, it's funny with the Aussie tickets because when I bought that, not bought it, so because it was rescheduled, wasn't it? When they rescheduled it to October, because we were supposed to be on tour this month.
That's right.
And we were plotting dates around the Aussie date because I was like, well, I can't be in Edinburgh like the day before I'm meant to be at the O2.
No.
So it seems absolutely crazy that we were doing that now.
Yeah.
But
It
it'll happen. Aussie will, I'm hoping Aussie will still do those gigs.
Oh God, I hope so.
2022. I mean, I hope it comes back sooner than that.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so. As far as yourself is concerned, what are your plans for the future as far as they can be at the moment?
Well, I think that our attitude is that we'll just adapt to what's happening, and even if we can't tour, we'll still be producing music, and we'll find ways of getting stuff out there. I think, like I said at the start of this conversation, you can't be too disheartened by things, and you've just got to be positive and try and do what you can. Like, actually, this year we've done a shitload of stuff. We've done a lot of gigs. I did a load of live streams. We're going to try and do a series of live streams which are full band shows that will be themed around different areas. So we're going to do like a classic rock night. We're going to do a metal night, a blues night. I'm quite keen to do the blues night because I feel like I've not done much blues in quite a while. And so it'd be quite good fun to play some of that stuff, and I've played a lot of my earlier material. But yeah, I mean, we've got dates that have been rescheduled to 2021. We'll see whether those happen. Yeah. I've spoken to a lot of the venues and said, look, if we can't do it with a full capacity crowd, we'll do it with a massively reduced crowd, and do live streams as part of it. A bit like we did with the first gig at the Face Bar. Yeah. And I think if people are stuck at home over the winter period and they need some entertainment, then they'll get into that sort of stuff. Yeah. But yeah, the main focus now is to get back to momentum in Devon and continue working on the next album. Although we're releasing World on Fire now, I'm in no rush to get this next album done. It needs to be as good as possible. Absolutely. So I'm quite keen to just let it organically evolve. Since we were at Momentum the other week, we tracked all of the songs that are going to be on there, and I've written another song which I think is awesome. And I said to the guys, like, we've got to have this on the record, and it's a total, anthemic chorus that I think is it's got to be on there. So when we go back next month, I'm hoping to get that recorded as well. And yeah, I'm positive about stuff, man. I think that what you need right now is for your entertainers and musicians to remain positive and keep, I know a lot of people who've had a really rough year, and so yeah, we lost tours and we lost a lot of money because of that, but there's been some great stuff that we've done. Absolutely. Not everybody has been able to go to France and play a show and then get smashed after the show in France and have an amazing time. And yeah, we had to quarantine after that, but it was worth it. And I think, yeah, we just got to be upbeat about things and keep writing material, hopefully entertaining people, whether it be in a physical space or online. And, when we come out the other side of this, just have as big a party as possible.
Always going to be a big one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you'll find me dribbling in the corner going... Remember that pandemic? It was shit. What a load of shit that was, wasn't it? I'm flashing forward to like Rambling Man Fair or Download, and me sort of stood there with Felipe and Laz going, that was shit, wasn't it? Yeah.
What was that all about?
Yeah, fucking hell.
Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you very much for coming down and having a chat with us.
Yeah, it's been an absolute blast, Nick. Take it easy, man.
You too, mate. Cheers.
Beyond the desert strand.
I hope you enjoyed our interview with Jack J Hutchinson. Jack, of course, has a new single, World on Fire, coming out on 13th of November. The links to this, where you can buy this, will be coming up on your screen very shortly. Please remember to like and subscribe before you check out. Thanks for watching.